A 74-year-old man sat across from me, his hands unsteady not from illness, but from something quieter, more insidious. He met my gaze and said softly, "I didn't know I was doing harm." For years, he had followed a routine familiar to millions of men ever, realizing the subtle toll it was taking on his well-being. And he's far from the only one. I'm Dr. Edward Kane, a board-certified urologist with over 30 years of experience helping older men preserve their vitality, intimacy, and sense of self. And I want to talk about a subject that most physicians tend to avoid: how self-pleasure evolves after age 60, and why failing to adapt can quietly impact your physical, emotional, and sexual health. You've likely heard it's normal, even beneficial. But what if I told you that how you engage in it is just as important as whether you do at all? In this post, I'll walk you through 5 essential truths about masturbation that many older men only discover when it's almost too late. These are not just tips, they're insights that can help maintain your circulation, safeguard your prostate, and restore a sense of confidence that may have started to fade. Stick with me until the end, because the final truth could fundamentally change how you approach aging and connection for the rest of your life. Before we dive in, if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications for more honest, age-appropriate health guidance designed for men in their 60s and beyond. And if this topic speaks to something you felt but never said aloud, type 1 in the comments to let me know you're here. If not, feel free to type 0. Your feedback helps shape this community. Let's begin with the first truth-own that has quietly shifted the lives of countless men once they finally understood it. Secret 1. Your erection is not the whole picture, and that's absolutely fine. I'll never forget the day a 72-year-old man sat down and said, with a mix of defeat and confusion, "Doc, I just can't perform like I used to. Does that mean I'm less of a man?" That question hit hard, not because it was rare, but because it's so common and so deeply misunderstood. Men come in worried, even ashamed, when they notice things aren't working as fast or as firmly as they once did. And too often, they believe it signals the end of their sexual identity. But here's the truth I wish every man past 60 could understand. An erection is no longer the only or even the most important part of your sexual story. And that shift? It's not decline, it's growth. As the body ages, natural changes take place. Blood flow isn't as robust. Hormones become less predictable. Nerve response slows down. What once happened automatically now asks for patience, for presence. But that doesn't mean your sexuality is broken. In fact, it can deepen, becoming less about performance and more about connection. We grew up in a world that linked masculinity to function, speed, and strength, but that definition left no room for grace, for slowness, for tenderness. I've had patients who went years thinking they were defective, when what they really needed was a new lens, one that values presence over pressure, meaning over mechanics. And once you embrace that, intimacy can be just as rich, sometimes richer than it was decades ago. The world many of you grew up in celebrated performance and equated masculinity with stamina. Vulnerability? That rarely had a place. No one sat you down and said, "Hey, connection still matters. Pleasure still matters." And certainly no one told you that a perfect erection wasn't the only way to experience either. Over the years, I've met countless men who believed something was broken inside them. They thought they were failing, when in truth, they simply didn't understand how their bodies were adapting. No one had ever explained that orgasm and erection are two separate things. That deep emotional release, satisfying intimacy, and physical pleasure are all still very much within reach even if they arrive differently than they did in your 20s. And because of that silence, many suffer alone, grieving a part of themselves they never actually lost. It didn't disappear, it just evolved. What matters most now isn't how long you last or how hard you get. It's about being present with yourself. It's about allowing your body to feel what it can feel today, not what it used to do, but what it still wants to do in this moment. When you stop trying to relive the past and start honoring where you are now, something powerful opens up. A gentler, more grounded kind of intimacy, shaped by self-compassion and curiosity. That's why this first truth matters so much. I've seen it shift lives. I've watched men rediscover their worth not by reclaiming old performance benchmarks, but by realizing they never stopped being whole. And now, let's move into the second truth zone that takes us even deeper beneath the surface. Because what if I told you that masturbation, especially as you age, isn't just about sexual desire at all? What if it's about memory, about self-connection, about emotion? What you're about to read may completely reframe how you see this act. If you're still with me, and these insights are striking a chord, go ahead and type 1 in the comments to let me know you're engaged. Now let's turn to the next insight tone that may change how you understand your relationship with your body in a way you've never considered before. Secret 2. Masturbation isn't just sexual. It's emotional and neurological. A few months ago, I sat with a man named Harold, a retired veteran in his late 70s. He wasn't in my office because of any urgent medical issue. Instead, he said something that stuck with me. I just don't feel anything anymore. And he didn't mean just physically, was talking about life, about feeling present and alive. At first, we thought it might be a circulatory issue, maybe hormone related. But as we talked, something deeper came into focus. Harold had been touching himself nearly every night, not out of desire, but out of habit, a quiet, unconscious ritual that had become a way to cope with long nights, insomnia, and unspoken sadness. Without even realizing it, he was using masturbation as a substitute for emotional connection. That conversation changed how I saw him and how he saw himself. Here's the reality most men were never taught. After 60, masturbation is more than a physical act. It's wired directly into your brain, your nervous system, and your emotional regulation. After orgasm, the body releases key neurotransmitters: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. These aren't just about pleasure. They regulate mood, support emotional stability, help you sleep better, and ease anxiety. And for many men, especially those living alone, this quiet act becomes one of the only moments their body feels soothed. It's not about lust, it's about grounding. For many older men, especially those living alone, this simple act becomes a quiet way to feel something again, a moment to reconnect, to find calm, to reclaim a sense of control. But here's the catch. When that habit becomes automatic, done without intention, it can slowly lose its meaning. That's exactly what happened to Harold. He kept the ritual, but the purpose faded. It became hollow. We were taught to bury our feelings, to stay strong, to believe that needing comfort made us weak. So, when the only time a man truly lets go is during a moment of private release, that act becomes more than physical. It becomes survival. But most men never realize this. They assume they're just clinging to a habit from younger years. What they don't see is that their body is reaching for something far deeper: peace, relief, even identity. The real risk here isn't the act itself. It's doing it on autopilot. When masturbation becomes a way to fill time or avoid feelings we haven't named, we start to lose our ability to truly connect with ourselves. But when it's done with mindfulness, with presence, it becomes something else entirely. A moment of healing, a kind of emotional and neurological nourishment. And yes, even at your age, that still matters a lot. If that truth caught you off guard, the next one may feel even more urgent. Because what if avoiding self-touch, altogether believing that part of you no longer matters, is quietly doing more harm than you imagined? The changes you've noticed in your body might not be age catching up with you. They might be neglect. Secret 3. The use it or lose it rule is real, but misunderstood. I'll never forget Roy. He was 74, recently widowed, and cautiously stepping back into the world of dating after more than a decade on his own. But instead of excitement, he walked into my office carrying shame. "I finally found someone," he told me, voice trembling. "But my body doesn't work anymore." You could hear the pain behind his words. He thought something inside him had broken. He thought the door had closed for good. But here's the truth he never heard, and one I wish every man in his 60s and beyond knew. This wasn't dysfunction. It was disuse. Your sexual health doesn't just decline with age, it declines with inactivity. Just like unused muscles begin to weaken, the tissues and blood vessels in your penis respond to how often they're engaged. When stimulation is absent for long stretches, everything slows down. Nerve sensitivity dulls, flexibility decreases, blood flow becomes restricted, and the worst part? There's no warning light, no sudden signal that it's happening. You only notice once it's already taken a toll. Roy hadn't touched himself in years, not because he didn't care to, but because he assumed it didn't matter anymore. That intimacy belonged to the past. He'd let it go, thinking he was simply aging. But what had really happened was silent adaptation. His body had adjusted to the lack of attention, shutting down functions that could have been preserved with just a little care. The good news? It wasn't too late. With steady, gentle stimulation free of pressure or expectation, his body began to respond again. Slowly, he started to feel sensations returning. And with that small shift, something deeper came back too. His sense of self, his quiet confidence. Far too many older men believe that, unless they have a partner, their sexual well-being no longer matters. That belief isn't just outdated, it's damaging. Masturbation in later life is about far more than pleasure. It's a way to keep your systems active, your circulation strong, and your body reminded that it still wants to engage, to respond, to feel. Because here's the truth, you still matter, and your body hasn't given up on you, it's just waiting for you to show up again. But if the absence of touch can silently lead to decline, what happens when the kind of stimulation we turn to is actually working against us? That brings us to something most older men never see coming: a quiet force that could be dulling your senses, weakening your desire, and slowly distancing you from real intimacy. You'll want to pay close attention to this next part. And if these insights are landing with you, if you're still following and feeling seen, drop a 1 in the comments. That small gesture tells me you're here and that you're open to the truth. Now let's move to the 4th secret tone that might change how you see your habits and their hidden impact. Secret 4. Porn may be silently rewiring your desire. One evening, I sat down with Ernest, a 68-year-old widower who'd been struggling with a sense of detachment, not just physically, but emotionally too. He said something that's echoed in many of the conversations I've had over the years. I still touch myself, but it doesn't feel the same. It's like I'm there, but not really feeling it. At first, he blamed aging, but the more we talked, the clearer the pattern became. Ernest had developed a routine of watching porn every night, something he turned to for comfort, for stimulation. But without realizing it, that habit had slowly numbed him. It didn't just change what excited him, it changed how he could feel. This is a truth many men discover too late. As your brain gets older, it becomes less adaptable. And if porn has become your main source of stimulation over the years, your brain may have trained itself to respond only to the rapid, exaggerated cues of those high-reward images. Porn triggers a surge of dopamine in your brain's chemical of reward and excitement. But over time, that flood teaches your brain to crave only the most intense, novel stimuli. Real connection begins to feel flat by comparison. The most alarming part? This shift is incredibly subtle. It creeps in over months, even years. At first, it feels harmless, something you do to unwind. But eventually, you notice your imagination isn't what it used to be. You struggle to feel through your own touch. You miss the spark, even though the desire is still there. Ernest once told me it felt like being trapped in a room with the lights on but no windows. He could see, but he couldn't feel. We worked together to gently shift him away from that reliance, not with judgment, but with care and steady support. And what happened next genuinely surprised him. Within just a few weeks, he began noticing real changes. His sensitivity began to return. His imagination started to spark again. And it all began the moment he stepped away from the screen and turned his attention inward to his breath, his senses, and his own presence. I only wish he had taken that step years earlier. It could have spared him so much time lost to numbness. Secret 5. Masturbation isn't a liability. It's a lifeline. Not long ago, a soft-spoken man named Walter came in for a regular checkup. He was 75, gentle in manner, with a quiet kind of dignity. As our appointment was wrapping up, he paused. then asked me something that clearly weighed on him. "Doctor, is it still okay to touch myself at this age?" That question stopped minute because it was rare, but because of how often I've heard it, always with that same undertone of shame, as if confessing something inappropriate. But what Walter didn't realize, what I wish every older man could hear, is that masturbation, especially in your later years, is not something to feel embarrassed about. In fact, it may be one of the most meaningful and health-supporting acts you still have in your daily life. When approached with care and awareness, self-pleasure goes far beyond sexual release. It promotes healthy blood circulation in the pelvic area, supports prostate function by helping to flush out stagnating fluids, and encourages better sleep and mood through the natural release of calming neurochemicals like dopamine and oxytocin. But even more importantly, it preserves your connection to a deeper part of yourself, the part that still experiences desire, holds on to a sense of identity, and quietly wants to feel alive. After Walter lost his wife, he let go of that part of his life. For nearly 6 years, he had denied himself any intimacy, thinking, "That chapter is closed." When he told me, "I didn't think I was allowed to still be that kind of man," it hit me hard, because I've heard that same belief in so many others, spoken or not. Our culture often expects older men to retreat, grow quiet, smaller, and less alive. But that's a myth. Your desire doesn't vanish with age. It softens, perhaps. It speaks more gently. But it never disappears. And if you ignore it for too long, it turns into something else: loneliness. When Walter finally allowed himself to reconnect with kindness and no expectation, she felt the shift. He began sleeping better. His mood lifted. He smiled more. He wasn't trying to feel young again. He was reclaiming his worth. That's what masturbation can become in your later years, not a habit to hide, but a powerful return to yourself. A way to say, even quietly, I still matter. Conclusion: 5 masturbation truths older men wish they had known. This is the moment where it all comes together, a message that goes beyond medical science and straight into the deeper meaning of what it truly means to age with dignity, confidence, and self-connection. If you're still here, I want to say thank you, not just for watching, but for having the courage to face a topic that most men have never been encouraged to even think about, let alone speak aloud. That, in itself, is a quiet form of strength. Not the kind that pretends nothing's wrong, but the kind that seeks to understand and grow. The 5 insights you've just heard aren't random health tips. They're lessons drawn from real stories, real pain, and real breakthroughs. Lessons men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond have come to understand the hard way, often after years of silent doubt or quiet regret. We started by debunking a harmful belief that an erection is the defining measure of your manhood. It's not. You can still experience meaningful intimacy, connection, and pleasure, even if the physical response has shifted. Then we talked about how masturbation is far more than a physical act. It connects to your emotional world, your brain chemistry, your nervous system. Done with presence, it becomes grounding, not just gratifying. You learned that neglect, choosing to stop altogether, can quietly lead to physical decline. But you also learned that it's not too late to reawaken what may have gone dormant, as long as you return with care, consistency, and respect. We discussed the hidden danger of over-reliance on porn, a habit that can slowly alter how your brain responds to real-world connection, and how stepping away from it can renew your senses, your imagination, and your ability to feel. And finally, we arrived at the truth most men never hear: that masturbation, especially in later life, is not shameful. It's not indulgent. It's not something to hide. It can be a gentle, powerful way to stay connected to the core of who you are, keep your body engaged, your identity intact, and your spirit alive. Over the years, I've spoken with so many men in their later decades who thought this chapter of life had ended. They believed their desire was gone, their role as a man complete. But what I've seen, and what I hope you now understand, is that desire doesn't just disappear. It becomes quieter. It waits for you to listen. And when you do, you find that you're still here, still whole, still worthy of feeling. Wherever you find yourself, whether you're in a relationship, living alone, rediscovering your body, or simply wondering if it's too late, these truths are for you. Because what you've lost isn't gone. It's only been waiting to be remembered. Your age doesn't exclude you from intimacy, from sensation, from healing. In fact, it might be the very reason you need to begin now. If even one of these 5 truths spoke to something in you, I invite you to keep going. Leave a comment below and tell me which part resonated the most. And if you're ready to keep learning, growing, and reclaiming your vitality with clarity and self-respect, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. I share honest, practical advice made especially for men navigating this stage of life. Because your voice still matters, your health still matters, and your story is far from over. And if you know someone, a friend, a brother, a fellow traveler who needs to hear this, send it their way. You never know the quiet difference one message can make. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep the silence broken. You deserve truth. You deserve support. And above all, you deserve to feel fully alive again.